Megan, it's strange, isn't it? Everyone kept saying how perfect our life is, yet here I am, questioning everything about it, I said, staring blankly at the dinner table, absent-mindedly fidgeting with my wedding ring. David looked up from his phone, a hint of irritation in his eyes. Megan, not tonight. I'm exhausted. Can we just have one peaceful dinner? I nodded, biting my tongue. Another evening, another conversation cut short. This had become our routine, silences filled with unspoken emotions. As I cleared the table, my phone buzzed. Mrs. Carter, there's been an accident. Your husband and his passenger are in critical condition, the voice on the other end informed. The plate slipped from my hand, shattering on the floor. What? Where? How bad is it? My voice was frantic. Calm down. They're being taken to Mercy General. Come quickly, the caller said before hanging up abruptly. I grabbed my coat and rushed out, my mind racing. In the emergency room, I was met by a police officer. Mrs. Carter? He asked, his face somber. Your husband and his passenger were involved in a car accident. They're both in surgery. His passenger? I whispered, trying to process. Who was with him? The officer hesitated. I believe her name is Samantha Foster. My heart sank. Samantha, my sister? What were they doing together? I spotted my mom, June, entering the waiting room. Megan, what's happening? I heard about the accident. Samantha, where is she? Mom, I don't know. They told me she's in surgery with David, I said, barely holding back my tears. 2 hours later, a doctor approached us. Mrs. Carter, Mrs. Foster, your husband and daughter made it through surgery. They'll live, but their conditions are serious. It'll be a long road to recovery. Relief mixed with confusion filled me. Why was Samantha in David's car? I looked at my mom, searching for answers, but she looked as puzzled as I felt. Days turned into a blur. Between hospital visits and sleepless nights, questions gnawed at me, but I pushed them aside, focusing on David's and Samantha's recovery. Though frail, David managed to speak. Megan, it wasn't my fault. You have to believe me. I nodded, but the doubt lingered. Why were they together that day? One evening, as I sat beside David's bed, Samantha's voice whispered from her room. I'm sorry, Megan. I never meant for this to happen. Sorry for what? What were you doing with David? I asked, my patience wearing thin. Samantha averted her eyes. Helping with the apartment. You had to work, remember? That doesn't explain everything, Samantha, I said, feeling my frustration bubble over. Before she could answer, the officer from earlier approached. Mrs. Carter, we need to talk. It seems there's more to the accident. We've found evidence suggesting tampering with your car's brakes. How is tampering? My knees felt weak. Who would do such a thing? We're investigating, but it might be someone close to you, he said, looking directly at me. My mind raced. Who could it be? How could this happen to us? In that moment, I realized the illusion of our perfect life had shattered, just like the plate that fell from my hand that night. The days ahead would test me in ways I never imagined. The day of our planned shopping trip with Samantha dawned earlier than expected. I was getting ready when my boss called. Megan, I need you to come into the office. It's urgent, he said, his voice strained. I glanced at my watch. But today is... I know, Megan. But it can't wait, he interrupted, sounding desperate. I sighed, feeling the pressure mount. I had promised Samantha this day. Running my fingers through my hair, I went to find David. David, I'm so sorry, but I have to go into work. Can you help Samantha with the furniture shopping today? I asked, feeling guilty. David's face softened despite the usual strain between us. Sure, Megan, I can do that. Are you okay? Yeah, just stressed. Thanks, David. I'll be back as soon as I can. I hurried out, catching the first bus to the office. The day was a blur of meetings and emergencies, all while my mind kept drifting to Samantha and David. Late in the afternoon, my phone rang. An unknown number flashed on the screen. I answered, my heart sinking immediately. Mrs. Carter, I regret to inform you, I heard nothing else. My entire world flipped upside down. As the unknown caller continued speaking, I held on to the edge of my desk, feeling the room spin. I rushed out of the office and sped to the hospital, my thoughts racing almost as fast. The echoes of the previous night's revelations kept haunting me. In the waiting room, I saw the same police officer who had become a grim fixture in our lives. His presence hinted at how dire the situation was. Officer, what's happening? Is it my husband and sister again? I asked, breathless. Yes, Mrs. Carter. Their conditions are still critical, but we have some suspicions regarding this incident too, his tone grave. What do you mean? My voice shook. We think someone tampered with their car, he said, studying my reaction. This couldn't be happening. Sabotage again? I glanced to see my mom, June, rushing in. Megan, what's going on? Samantha and David. Mom, it's bad. The police think someone tampered with their car, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. My mother gasped, clutching my arm. Who would do such a thing? That's what we need to find out, the officer said. We need to investigate, but it's looking like someone close to you is involved. As we waited, my emotions whirled. David was supposed to help Samantha, but now they both lay fighting for their lives. In the sterile halls of the hospital, the doctor emerged again. Mrs. Carter, Mrs. Foster, they'll make it through surgery, but their conditions remain serious. It'll be a hard recovery. Everything felt like a nightmare come to life. As I struggled to process this, a chilling thought crossed my mind. Who would do this, and why target David and Samantha? David was conscious again later, still weak but coherent. Megan, he croaked, reaching out for my hand. It wasn't my fault. I sat by his bed trying to piece everything together. The same questions replayed. Why were they in the car together? Why did this keep happening? Then, like a shadow cutting through the dim light, another question loomed. Was someone deliberately trying to tear us apart? The pieces didn't fit, and the answers kept slipping through my fingers. The days ahead would reveal more than just the extent of their injuries. They would expose the darkest corners of our lives, corners I wasn't ready to face. I gripped the steering wheel, driving to the hospital with a white-knuckled intensity. The news of the accident played on repeat in my mind. David and Samantha. Why did this keep happening? The hospital loomed large as I pulled into the parking lot. I stumbled through the entrance, my breaths coming in shallow gasps. The familiar sterile smell hit me like a wave. I rushed to the receptionist. David Carter and Samantha Foster, please. Where are they? They're on the 3rd floor, ICU, she responded, eyes filled with empathy. Racing to the elevator, I barely noticed the others around me. Every second felt like an eternity. As the doors opened on the 3rd floor, I spotted the police officer from earlier, waiting with a grim expression. Mrs. Carter, let's talk, he said, leading me to a small, quiet room. What happened? I demanded, my voice cracking. Preliminary evidence suggests someone tampered with the brakes on your car, he began. We're investigating, but we need to address some initial suspicions. I looked at him in disbelief. Who could have done this? We don't know yet, but it might be someone very close to you, he said, holding my gaze. The room spun as I tried to comprehend his words. Someone close to me? Who would do such a thing? Just then the doctor entered. Mrs. Carter, you and your mother can see them now, but they're still very weak. Please, just a few minutes. We followed him silently to the ICU. I walked in, feeling like a ghost. David lay motionless, tubes and machines everywhere. His eyes fluttered open as I approached. Megan, he whispered, his voice strained. I'm sorry. David, don't try to talk, I said, a lump in my throat. We'll figure this out. I moved to Samantha's side, her face pale and battered. She slowly opened her eyes, looking at me with a flicker of guilt. I'm so sorry, Megan. I never wanted this, she mumbled, tears welling up. Why, Sam? Why were you with David? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Before she could reply, the officer stepped in. Mrs. Carter, we have more questions for you. We suspect there might be something deeper going on. He led me out of the room as my mind raced with a flurry of questions. What do you mean by something deeper? I asked, trying to keep up. We're looking at this from all angles. Right now, our focus is on who had access to your car and why they'd target both David and Samantha, he explained, his tone serious. I nodded, absorbing the weight of his words. Someone had it out for my family, and as the picture started to come into focus, I realized I needed to be strong to face whatever truths came our way. Back in the waiting area, June wrapped her arms around me. Megan, we'll get through this. We have to. Her words offered a small glimmer of hope amidst the chaos. As I sat there, I knew the days ahead would be filled with difficult revelations and harder choices, but one thing was clear. I wouldn't stop until I uncovered the truth. And whoever was behind this, they'd pay for every bit of pain they caused. The hospital became my second home in the weeks that followed. David and Samantha were awake but far from okay. Their recoveries were slow, and with each day, our family splintered further. David's frustration grew, seeping into every interaction. One evening, as I entered his room, I found him seething. "Megan, this is unbearable," he snapped. "Why can't you do anything right? Get the nurses, now." I flinched at his harsh tone, but nodded and stepped out. While I sought the nurses, a knot tightened in my stomach. Returning with a nurse, David glared at me. "It took you long enough," he muttered. Embarrassed and hurt, I took a step back, letting the nurse do her job. Walking out, I heard Samantha calling for me. I headed into her room, already bracing for the stress. "Megan, can you help me with this bed adjustment? Why is everything so hard to reach?" she complained, sounding almost whiny. I adjusted the bed, trying to keep a steady hand. "There you go, better?" "Yeah, thanks. Just, don't you get tired of this?" she asked, her voice softer, almost reflective. I sighed, wiping a hand across my forehead. "It's exhausting, Sam, but it's what we have to do." She looked away, silent, and for a moment I thought through the shadows of her guilt. But I couldn't afford to delve into their thoughts. Actions mattered now. Moments later, June joined me in the hallway. She looked worn out, dark circles under her eyes. "Megan, dear, this is too much. You need rest." "I can't, Mom. They need me," I argued, though my body ached with fatigue. As I turned to leave, I caught a snippet of conversation that chilled me. "Damn it, Samantha, how could you trust anyone else to handle this mess?" David's voice accused from his room. "I thought we'd be smart enough to avoid this," Samantha retorted, her voice dripping with exasperation. Their words hung in the air as I stepped back, unnoticed. Everywhere I turned, betrayal seemed to lurk. Later that evening, the officer returned with an update. "Mrs. Carter, we confirmed that your car's brakes were tampered with. It appears meticulous." A lump formed in my throat. "Do you have any leads?" "We're following up on some information, but nothing concrete yet. It seems very personal," he added. I nodded, feeling the weight of new suspicion. Each discovery pushed me closer to an edge I couldn't ignore. Back in Samantha's room, I watched as she rested fitfully. Her condition was serious, and her needs were endless. But as I cared for her, the tension between us lingered just below the surface. David, on the other hand, became increasingly venomous. "Megan, this is your fault, isn't it?" he'd accuse, his bitterness slicing through the thin air of the hospital room. "You always wanted something more. Well, look where that got us." I clenched my jaw, swallowing down my retorts. Silence became my shield. As days dragged on, June was caught between us, her own exhaustion growing. The strain in David and Samantha's behavior took a toll on her, and it showed. In the quiet moments, when the hospital felt heavy with unspoken words, I knew I had to stay resilient. This darkness, whatever it held, would not swallow me whole. The truth, however twisted, was my next goal. And in that journey, my quiet determination was my solitary companion. June sat next to me in the waiting room, her face pale from the persistent strain. "Mom, you should go home. Rest," I said, squeezing her hand. She shook her head. "No, Megan, I need to be here for both of you." A police officer approached, his expression serious. "Mrs. Carter, can we speak privately?" I nodded and followed him to a small room. The door closed behind us, magnifying the silence. "We've found more evidence," he began, eyes locking onto mine. "The brake tampering points to someone close to you. Further investigation led us to Maxine Lewis. Do you know her?" My heart skipped a beat. "Maxine? No, I don't think so." "She has a strong vendetta against David," he explained. "It seems they have a history." I had never heard of her before, but my gut twisted. What kind of history? "We're still piecing it together, but she's someone you should be aware of," he said, his tone firm. "We'll keep you updated." Back in David's room, I tried to mask my turmoil. He lay there, eyes closed, looking fragile. When his eyes opened, the familiar coldness was there. "David, do you know a Maxine Lewis?" I asked, my voice steady. He blinked, showing confusion for the first time. "Maxine? Why are you asking about her?" "She's connected to the brake tampering," I said, watching his reaction closely. David's face darkened. "Don't believe everything they say. Megan, she's just a liar trying to ruin me." A chilling realization set in. His words sounded defensive rather than innocent. I took a step back, needing to breathe. Later, as I moved through the hospital, I saw Samantha's demands growing. "Mom, I need this. I need that," she whined, pushing June to exhaustion. With June physically drained and emotionally wrecked, the hospital turned into a battleground. I saw the toll it took on her, breaking my heart. One evening, as I huddled in the courtyard for a moment of solitude, I heard hushed voices. Peeking through the window, I saw David on the phone. "You need to fix this, Samantha. We can't let Megan find out." David's voice was stern. Samantha replied, her voice shaky, "I thought we covered all our tracks. How did they find Maxine?" David glanced around, then hissed, "She's relentless. We need to deal with her before she exposes everything." Their words sent a shiver down my spine. My suspicions solidified into a horrifying reality. They were in on something deep, something dark. Determined to get the truth, I confronted Samantha the next morning. "Sam, what's going on between you and David?" I demanded. Her eyes widened, fear and guilt mingling. "Megan, you don't understand. Help me understand then," I said, my voice cracking but forceful. Before she could respond, the same officer reappeared. "Mrs. Carter, we've confirmed some findings. Maxine Lewis has a significant grievance with your husband related to financial deceit and personal betrayal." I stood there, my world crumbling as the pieces came together. David and Samantha had lies stretching far and wide, and now Maxine's quest for revenge had entwined us all. Leaving the hospital that night, my resolve hardened. The darkness needed to come to light. But first, I'd have to face both David and Samantha, expose their deceit, and deliver justice for everyone hurt along the way. The truth was no longer hiding, it was marching right towards us. With every step, I knew I was getting closer to unraveling the entire conspiracy, and I swore to myself nobody would walk away unscathed once the truth surfaced. The days passed in a blur, each one blending into the next. My focus sharpened. I had to confront David and Samantha. The lies needed to end. One morning, I stood outside David's hospital room, summoning the courage to go in. When I finally walked in, his eyes flicked up from his phone. "Megan, what now?" he asked, annoyance clear in his voice. "I know about Maxine. I know about the tampered brakes. You need to tell me everything," I demanded, crossing my arms. David's expression shifted, a sneer curling his lips. "You think you know everything, huh? You know nothing, Megan." "No more lies, David. Why was Samantha with you?" I pressed, feeling my anger surge. He laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. "Samantha and I are closer than you think. We've been together behind your back for months." No, I felt the ground give way beneath me. "What?" I whispered, barely able to breathe. David's eyes gleamed with malice. "Yeah, Megan. While you were busy playing the doting wife, Samantha and I were planning a future. One that didn't involve you." My heart pounded in my chest. "You used me?" "Of course," David said, his voice dripping with contempt. "We needed your money, your connections. It was all a game." With shaking hands, I left his room and stumbled into Samantha's. She looked up, guilt and fear etched into her face. "Megan, she started, but I cut her off. "Spare me the excuses, Sam. I know. David told me everything." She broke down, tears streaming down her face. "I'm so sorry. It was a mistake." "A mistake?" I shouted, rage boiling over. "You betrayed me, sabotaged my life." Samantha sobbed, unable to meet my eyes. "It wasn't supposed to go this far. We just wanted to push you out of the way, take control." I clenched my fists, shaking with anger. "You wanted to destroy me. Why? Because you were jealous? Because you and David wanted my life?" Suddenly a nurse walked in, startled by the intensity in the room. "Is everything okay here?" I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. "No, it's not, but it will be." I left the room, resolved to take action. The first step was meeting with the officer. "Mrs. Carter, we have more to show you," he said, leading me to a small office. The screen flickered to life, showing surveillance footage from my car. There were David and Samantha, laughing, touching. The evidence was undeniable. Tears filled my eyes as I watched my trust shatter. "Megan," the officer's voice was gentle, "we can pursue charges. Their manipulation of your finances, the attempted murder, it's all documented." Stunned, I nodded. "Do what you need to do." Later, at home, I found a message from Maxine. Her voice trembled, but her words were clear. "David destroyed my life. I needed him to pay. I never meant for you to be hurt, Megan." Maxine's pain mirrored my own, a twisted kinship formed through betrayal. Her story, one of deceit and revenge, echoed in mine. The next day, I returned to the hospital with divorce papers. David's eyes widened when he saw them. "Megan, wait. We can work this out," he pleaded, a hint of desperation in his voice. "It's over, David," I said coldly, dropping the papers on his bed. "You took everything from me. Now you'll pay." Walking away, I felt a strange mix of sorrow and relief. Samantha's screams echoed behind me, but I didn't turn back. For the first time in weeks, I felt a glimmer of hope. The path ahead was uncertain, but I was stronger now. The truth, bitter and painful, had set me free. And with that freedom came the resolve to rebuild, to rise from the ashes of betrayal. David tried to stop me as I walked out of his hospital room, but I did not turn back. His pleas faded as I moved down the corridor, my steps growing firmer with each stride. I had taken the first step toward reclaiming my life. The next few days were a whirlwind. News of David's and Samantha's affair spread like wildfire. Friends, colleagues, and even family members reached out, shocked and judgmental. I let them talk, their words bouncing off my new armor. One afternoon, I walked into a cafe for a meeting with the police officer. The place was buzzing, but I felt a strange calm wash over me. "Mrs. Carter," the officer greeted with a nod. "We have finalized the charges against David and Samantha. They'll be facing a lengthy legal battle." "Good," I replied, my voice steady. "I want justice, not just for me, but for everyone they hurt." He slid a document across the table. "This outlines their financial manipulations and the evidence we've gathered. Their social standing is already in ruins." I scanned the paper, feeling a mix of satisfaction and sorrow. It was all there in black and white, every deceitful act laid bare. Leaving the cafe, I bumped into Maxine. Her face was a mask of regret. "Megan," she began softly, "I never meant for it to go this far. I just wanted David to feel the pain he caused me." I studied her, seeing the echoes of my own pain. "Maxine, you took extreme measures, but I understand why," I said, surprising myself with the empathy in my voice. "We both suffered because of him." She nodded, tears filling her eyes. "I'm sorry for everything." With a heavy heart, I walked away, my mind set on the next step. My journey was far from over. The legal proceedings against David and Samantha progressed quickly. Each court appearance was another blow to their fabricated lives. Their faces, once haughty and assured, now looked haunted. One morning, I stood outside the courthouse, clutching my mother's hand. June looked weary but resolute. "Megan, I'm so proud of you. You've been so strong." I smiled faintly. I had to be, for both of us. Inside, the courtroom buzzed with whispered conversations. When David and Samantha entered, all eyes turned to them. They looked diminished, mere shadows of their former selves. David's lawyer stood first. "Your Honor, my client pleads not guilty." The judge's gaze was stern. "The evidence is overwhelming. I hope you're prepared for the consequences of your actions." Samantha's lawyer followed suit, but her plea sounded even more hollow. Their downfall was inevitable and thoroughly deserved. After the hearings, I approached David. For the last time, I stared into the eyes of the man I had once loved. "This is the end, David. You've lost everything." His eyes flared with anger. "You think you've won, Megan? You're as foolish as ever." I shook my head, feeling nothing but pity. "No, David, I'm no longer your victim. Goodbye." Later, I visited Samantha in her care facility. She was a shell of her former self, her demanding nature now subdued by the cold reality of her situation. "Why, Samantha?" I asked. Tears streamed down her face. "I was jealous, insecure. David filled my head with lies. I betrayed you, and now I'm paying for it." I sighed deeply, the finality of her words sinking in. "You've caused so much pain, Sam, but I hope you find peace someday." Stepping outside, I felt a strange sense of release. The storm had passed, leaving me to pick up the pieces. I was scarred, but stronger. The world outside the courthouse was bright, filled with possibilities. As I walked away, I knew the journey ahead would be about healing and rediscovering myself, free from the shadows of betrayal. The future was mine to shape, and with each step, I embraced the promise of a new beginning. 2 years later, the hospital memories felt like a distant nightmare. Life had moved forward, carrying me with it. I stood in my office, stacks of paperwork before me, yet this time everything felt different. Lighter. A knock on the door interrupted my thoughts. "Hey, Megan, ready for lunch?" Henry's voice brought a smile to my face. Henry Thompson had walked into my life unexpectedly. We met at a professional event, his kind eyes and genuine smile a stark contrast to everything I had known before. "Yeah, let's go," I replied, grabbing my coat. As we walked to the cafe, Henry's hand gently brushed mine, a simple yet comforting gesture. During lunch, he looked at me with a mixture of pride and affection. "You've come so far, Megan. I'm amazed at your strength and grace." I smiled, feeling a warmth spread inside. I couldn't have done it without your support, Henry. Our relationship was built on trust and mutual respect, the very things I thought I'd never find again. It reflected my personal growth and newfound independence. Life had its challenges, but I faced them head-on, with Henry by my side. Returning to my apartment that evening, I marveled at how much had changed. The walls now displayed art that I loved, and the spaces reflected my tastes, my choices. June was there, having tea on the balcony. Her presence was a constant reminder of enduring love. "Hey, Mom," I greeted, sitting beside her. She smiled, her eyes filled with contentment. "Megan, I've watched you rebuild your life from the ground up. I couldn't be prouder." "Thanks, Mom. That means a lot." My voice was soft, filled with genuine emotion. We chatted about everything and nothing, enjoying the silence that spoke volumes. The turbulence of the past had given way to stillness and healing. Later that night, as I prepared for bed, a sense of peace enveloped me. The scars from the betrayal remained, but they no longer defined me. They were a testament to my resilience, a reminder of the strength I had discovered within myself. The next morning, Henry and I attended a community event. Children laughed, vendors sold crafts, and the air was filled with joy. We wandered through the stalls, soaking in the vibrant atmosphere. "Megan!" a voice called out. I turned to see an old friend. We exchanged pleasantries, and as the conversation flowed, I realized how far I had come. The community that once knew me through my shattered marriage now saw a woman reborn, thriving amidst newfound freedom. As the sun began to set, Henry and I sat on a park bench, watching the world go by. He turned to me, his expression serious but tender. "Megan, I know we've both been through a lot, but I want to build our future together. Will you?" Before he could finish, I placed a hand on his. "Yes, Henry, I want that too." His smile was radiant, and in that moment, I saw the future, bright and filled with possibility. The journey from betrayal to healing had been long, but it shaped me into someone stronger, wiser. The shadows of the past didn't disappear, but they faded, replaced by the light of new beginnings. Embracing Henry's hand, I felt a deep sense of gratitude. Life had offered me a second chance, and this time I wasn't looking back. The future, with all its promises, awaited, and I was ready to step into it, with hope and newfound courage leading the way.
One day, I found both a completed divorce form and a marriage registration form in my husband's room. This revealed two things. First, my husband wanted to divorce me, and second, he wanted to marry another woman. I had a suspicion about his affair, but I never imagined he'd gone this far to prepare. Coincidentally, his business trip was scheduled right around this time. It felt like my only chance. My name is Carrie, 32 years old. My family consists of my husband, Bob, whom I married 6 years ago, and our daughter, Melanie, who turns 4 this year. After having my daughter, I switched to working remotely. I work from home after dropping her off at kindergarten. Our life has been peaceful, without any major fights. Lately, Bob has been busy with overtime and networking golf games. Our intimacy has decreased, but blessed with a cute daughter. I thought I was happy. Then one day, while cleaning his room, I found a receipt in his desk drawer. Huh? What's this receipt? $5,100? The receipt was from a well-known brand. I was shocked by the unfamiliar amount. Why is this receipt here? Bob isn't interested in branded stuff, especially not women's brands. After much thought, I concluded it might be a birthday present from him. My birthday is in 2 weeks. It must be. Choosing to interpret it conveniently, I pretended not to notice and put the receipt back where I found it. Then, it was my birthday. He didn't come home that day. If he had prepared a present, he would have come home early, maybe even with a cake. My expectations were quickly dashed. He only came home after midnight, reeking of perfume. He doesn't wear perfume. Could it be? I subtly reminded him of my birthday. Hey, Bob. Know what day it is?
Whoa, what's up? Tired, you know?
Today was my birthday.
Oh, right. Happy birthday.
His indifferent congratulations left me disappointed. That's it? His visibly annoyed response followed.
Come on, you're over 30. Aren't you too old to be celebrating every birthday?
Maybe, but...
I'm going to take a bath and go to bed.
Okay. He left the living room and it was clear he had no intention of celebrating, let alone giving me a present. I was convinced he was having an affair. That receipt was definitely for his mistress. His frequent absences for overtime and golf were probably to meet her. The thought brought tears of sadness and frustration. All the household and childcare responsibilities were on me, yet he was out meeting another woman under the guise of work. Convinced of his infidelity, I decided to gather information on his mistress. A few days later, I checked his phone while he was asleep. I found evidence of his affair through texts and pictures, and to my surprise, there were 2 women, not just one. Unbelievable. One affair was shocking enough, but 2? What was he thinking? To think the man I loved was such a despicable person. I was deeply disappointed. At that moment, my anger outweighed my sadness. I was determined to make him pay. With that thought in mind, I started collecting information on his mistresses. The first mistress, Karen, worked at the same company as my husband. She was in her early 20s and Bob was her mentor. It seemed their relationship developed from their conversations at work. I was appalled at their inability to separate work from personal life. The second mistress, Sally, was an older woman in her 40s. They met on a dating app and she turned out to be a real piece of work. Twice divorced with 4 kids. After learning about her past, my husband's texts to her became noticeably colder. Yet, she sent him messages like, "Divorce your wife and marry me. I have kids, but their dad has custody, so it's fine. I can't live without you, Bobby. Marry me and I'll love you forever." Even as a woman, I was appalled by her countless messages. However, despite her intense love, my husband wanted to end things with her. Clearly, his real interest was in Karen, his co-worker. In his messages with Karen, the topic of marriage had come up. To him, both Sally and I were just obstacles. Looking back, I can speak about it calmly, but discovering the affair was a shock. Thinking about him enjoying affairs while neglecting our family made me furious. Considering Melanie's future, I decided to divorce him and demand a fair settlement for alimony and child support. Initially, that was my plan. But merely taking his money and saying, "Have a good life," felt too easy for him. Abandoning me and our daughter, just paying us off to find his own happiness? No way. I pondered how to punish him. While cleaning his room, I found several papers in a drawer, a divorce form and a marriage registration form, both filled out. What? What are these? Both completed. Unbelievable. I knew he wanted to divorce me, but to prepare a marriage registration for his mistress was outrageous. Fury surged through me, my hands trembling with anger. I would never forgive him. I would do whatever it takes to drag him down to hell. And so, I began preparing for my revenge. A few days later, Bob unusually initiated a conversation.
I've got a business trip this weekend.
Oh, really? How long?
A week in Chicago. Can you get my stuff ready?
Sure, got it. Whether it was really a business trip didn't matter to me. Opportunities like this were rare. I slipped a small GPS tracker into his travel bag. As expected, his destination wasn't Chicago, but New York, probably to travel with his beloved Karen. I messaged Sally, the second mistress, and secretly arranged to meet her without my husband's knowledge. Initially suspicious, she quickly took the bait when I mentioned my intention to divorce. Hours later, I met with Sally and said, "Nice to meet you. I'm Bob's wife, Carrie. I'm getting straight to the point. We're getting divorced."
"Is that true?"
"Of course. Look, this is the divorce form my husband prepared. I've already signed it and was about to submit it."
"But why are you telling me this?"
"I'm giving this to you." I handed her the completed marriage registration form and she was visibly shocked.
"Is this?"
"It seems he wants to divorce me and marry you. I thought it'd be better to give this to you early, so I brought it."
"Really? So he did understand my feelings."
She must have been thrilled, as she accepted the marriage registration without any doubt. Surprisingly, she even offered to pay alimony and started writing a pledge right there. Well, I wasn't going to say no, so I took the pledge and we went our separate ways. I then went straight to the city hall and successfully submitted the divorce form. Now everything was set. All that was left was for me to move out and wait for Bob to come back. That day, I was at my parents' house with my daughter. I had already told my parents everything, but seeing me actually back, my mother asked worriedly,
Are you sure you're okay?
"I'm fine, Mom. The divorce form has been accepted, and I'll talk to Melanie about it in time. Just give us some space for now."
Yeah, of course, honey, but you'll talk to Bob, right?
"Yeah, I will. He's coming back from his trip tomorrow, so I expect he'll contact me." The next day, my ex-husband called in a panic upon returning from his affair trip.
Where are you, Carrie?
"I'm at my parents' house."
Your parents? Why all of a sudden? Melanie's not here and all your stuff is gone from the room. Did you decide to do a big cleanup? When are you coming back?
"What are you talking about? Melanie and I aren't coming back to that house."
What?
He sounded utterly baffled. I took this opportunity to confront him about his affairs. "Now that it's come to this, I need to ask you this. You're having an affair, aren't you?
What are you talking about?
And you wanted to divorce me, right? That's why you prepared the divorce form?"
How did you know that?
Just as I thought. I went ahead and submitted the divorce form, considering your feelings.
What? You submitted it? The divorce form?
Yes, and you'll be paying alimony and child support. You can at least take responsibility for that, right? After a moment of silence, he boldly said,
Of course, that's the plan. I never thought you'd find out about my affairs, but if we're already divorced, there's nothing I can do. I'll pay what needs to be paid.
"Good. As long as you pay the alimony and child support, that's all that matters to me."
Yeah, okay. Well, thanks for everything, Carrie. You're really understanding. I truly appreciate it.
Despite having 2 mistresses, he showed no sign of remorse. Yet he tried to end our relationship on a clean note, which infuriated me. How could he think to settle this amicably after all the cheating? Apologizing should be the first step. I decided to reveal everything to my despised ex-husband. "Oh, by the way, I've also delivered the marriage registration to your new wife."
What? New wife?
"Why play dumb? Your beloved Sally, one of your mistresses."
Wait, Carrie. You're joking, right? This isn't true?
His voice was trembling even over the phone. I was struggling to hold back my laughter. Why would I lie about that? I made sure to give it to Sally while you were enjoying your trip to New York with Karen.
Wait. Why Sally of all people? I wanted to marry Karen.
Maybe you should contact her? I gave her the marriage registration form a few days ago. She might have already submitted it.
No, wait. I never intended to marry Sally.
He begged me in a tearful voice.
Please, Carrie, help me. I'd rather not divorce you than marry Sally.
What? What are you saying now?
Sally is bad news. She's like a stalker and she won't take no for an answer. She's persistent.
That's what you get for meeting someone through a dating app. You brought this on yourself.
Oh, I know. I'll marry you again. Just help me out.
What about Karen? She was your true love, wasn't she?
I'll break up with her too. I've realized you're the one for me. I won't look at other women anymore, so please help me.
No way. Why should I help a jerk like you who has 2 mistresses while having a daughter? Do you even understand your position? You had relations with other women despite having a family. You think alimony and child support are enough to settle this? Are you an idiot?
Please, forgive me, Carrie.
Don't say my name so casually. I will never have anything to do with you again, and I will never forgive you. Melanie won't see you, and if you show up in front of us, I won't hold back. Stay out of our lives forever. I hung up on him after saying this. He kept calling back incessantly, but I never answered. Later, after divorce negotiations, he was ordered to pay a substantial amount in alimony and child support for our daughter. Of course, I also demanded appropriate compensation from the 2 mistresses. They would fully understand the consequences of messing with a married man. I heard that right after our divorce, Sally barged into the house he and I used to live in, believing he was completely in love with her. She moved in with all her belongings.
Why are you here?
Why? Because we're finally husband and wife. We can live together at last, Bobby.
No, I never intended to marry you.
Oh, don't be shy. I've already submitted the marriage registration form your ex-wife gave me.
That's not what I meant.
Love wins, darling. Don't sweat the small stuff. As long as I can be with you, I'm happy.
Help me.
Just when you thought it was over, his hell was far from finished. Since Sally moved in, Karen, the other mistress, showed up at the house and encountered Sally. They immediately realized the situation and got into a physical fight.
Who the hell are you? Why are you in his house? Who the hell are you? I'm his wife.
Wife? Bob, I thought you divorced your wife.
He divorced her and remarried me. Don't get in the way of our love.
I can't believe this. Bob, you said you wanted to marry me, and then you marry another woman?
I was chosen. You were not. That's all there is to it.
What? I don't need this crap. Disgusted, Karen cut ties with him and even reported his infidelity to their company, leading to his dismissal. Now he's juggling part-time jobs to barely make ends meet, paying me alimony and child support while getting nagged by Sally to earn more. My ex-husband still sends messages occasionally.
I'll pay the alimony and child support, so please, let's start over, Carrie. I promise I won't cheat ever again. Come back to me, I can't take Sally anymore. Karen got me fired. Help me.
I check the messages but never reply. No matter what he says now, I have no intention of getting back together or feeling sorry for him. He brought this upon himself. He should suffer the consequences of his actions. I'm considering blocking his address and leaving everything to my lawyer. Meanwhile, I'm living a peaceful life at my parents' house, planning to explain the situation to my daughter as she's about to start elementary school. It'll be tough for her to face this harsh reality, having her father taken away. But I'll explain it to her as many times as it takes until she understands. Someday when she's grown up, she'll surely get it. My parents are supporting me, and I want to enjoy happy times ahead with my parents and daughter.
Green juice, hanging exercise equipment, treadmill, oversized radio, and unopened cardboard boxes. The robot vacuum seems to have gotten lost while trying to get through all of these things. Unable to get back to its charger, it ran out of battery in the bathroom. There are frosty boxes of pizza, half-eaten carton of ice cream, waffles, and salmon fillets in the freezer. No matter how hard I try to tidy up, I'm astounded by the fact that more and more things pile up. I'm Allison, 40 years old. I've been busy with work, chores, and raising a child and haven't had time to take care of myself. My 10-year-old daughter Emily even tells me, "Mom, you have to eat breakfast." I know, but it's too hectic with housework and getting my husband and daughter off to work. I normally just end up having only a cup of coffee before I leave. My husband David snickers at me saying, "You're not very efficient," while sitting on the sofa playing with his phone. My mother-in-law Pat is a fixture in front of the TV. "We are out of toilet paper. Don't forget to buy some on your way home," she says scornfully. Whose fault is it that I'm so busy? I feel anger boiling up, but I force myself to swallow it and take a deep breath instead. I don't want to argue in front of my daughter. Exactly 1 year ago, we took in Pat and started living together. The event that led to it was the passing of my father-in-law. He held a high position in a big company, and the in-laws were supposedly well off. When he passed away, David, his sister, and Pat were stunned to find that there was no inheritance. On the contrary, there were debts due to renovation of the house, car loans, and so on. He apparently couldn't change his extravagant lifestyle after he retired and had spent all his savings. I thought he was living large and never expected him to be on the verge of bankruptcy. The loan could not be paid off by Pat's Social Security alone, and she had to sell her car and house to make a little extra money. Of course, we couldn't let her, who had no sense of money, live alone. My sister-in-law, who was married and lived with her own mother-in-law, begged us to take her in. Pat, who had spent all of her late husband's money, was not remorseful at all. She induced David's sympathy by acting as a sad widow, who had lost everything and had nobody but her son to rely on. It boosted his ego, and he started to spoil her. A month after she moved in, so many boxes from Amazon arrived. I was so stunned that I asked the courier, "What? Are you sure all of these are for my house?" As I was in shock, looking at the piles of boxes at the entrance, Pat walked up to me smiling. "The internet is amazing, isn't it? I ordered them yesterday and everything arrived already." "Are these all for you?" "Yes, my lovely son ordered them for me. Now please take everything to my room." I felt a bit of anxiety, but I convinced myself that she had just moved in and needed some things. I quietly carried them to her room. It didn't end there. A month later. "What? Again?" "Ha ha ha," I exclaimed unintentionally at the front door, and the courier laughed awkwardly. It was natural that both of us were amazed. That was the third time that a large number of packages had been delivered to the house. Of course, all of them were addressed to Pat. What came out of those boxes were not the necessities of daily life, but bags, healthy foods, CDs, and so on. They were all little luxuries, and were not the kind of things that a person without money would buy. She wrote down the items she wanted while watching TV, and David ordered all of them. She beamed with joy when the items arrived. I could not agree with it, and made my frustration clear to David. Hey, you're spending too much.
Shut up! I can't believe you are trying to take away one of the few pleasures of old people. You're spiteful.
I don't mean it like that, but the money.
It's coming from me and her, so don't complain. Or are you trying to say that I don't make enough money?
He got so angry that we couldn't discuss the matter. Pat, of course, couldn't care less about my frustration and continued writing down what she wanted, and he bought them for her. Half a year passed in that way. When I got home with Emily one evening, I felt something strange in the house. The living room was overflowing with things. Emily noticed the cause first. "Mom, my room." "What's going on?" She urged me to look around the room. Her wardrobe and desk were lined up on one side. I rushed to her room to find David in the middle of moving Pat's belongings in. "Wait a minute, this is Emily's room."
We have no choice. There's not enough space in my mom's room. It's a luxury for a 10-year-old to have her own room anyway. She will be too spoiled and won't become a responsible adult.
You're kidding. She's entitled to her privacy too. Where is she going to change her clothes now?
We're a family. She can change in the bathroom or anywhere. If her mother thinks like that, she will start bringing boys over soon.
You're talking nonsense. What an inappropriate comment to say to his daughter. Emily had been staring at her room in despair beside me and muttered, "Daddy sucks." He was startled, but she went into the bathroom and locked herself in. I let out a deep sigh. I agree with her.
What the hell? I just feel sorry for my mom.
He seriously didn't think what he was doing was out of line. Meanwhile, Pat was nonchalantly opening the packages that had arrived. I was fed up living with those two, who not only had no sense of money, but were heartless. Emily hardly spoke to them for a week after that. I only supported her and refused to become a bridge between her and them. I was convinced that it was 100% their fault. They must have realized that it was a serious situation. One day, David proposed to cook a special dinner for a change. I was anxious, but I left to him, thinking it was the last chance for him to make up with her. When Emily and I came home, David and Pat cheerfully invited us to the dining table. There we saw for the first time a large electric pot and a pile of crab legs. We fell silent at the sight. David looked satisfied and smug.
Emily, Grandma prepared a delicious meal for you tonight.
I'm allergic to crab.
Huh?
I scolded him, who looked puzzled harshly. I told you many times that she is allergic to crab, didn't I? I asked you to explain to Pat too, because it could be life-threatening. Emily, dear, don't you want to eat my food? It's not that I don't want to, but I can't. She tried her best to explain in desperation. Pat didn't try to understand and made a sorrowful face. David got upset at the sight and scolded Emily.
Hey! Don't be rude to your grandmother! It's not about whether you can or can't eat it. It's about how grateful you are for Grandma's kindness.
It's not my fault. I hate you. Emily! She retreated to the bedroom crying, and I tried to chase after her. I heard David let out an exaggerated sigh, like a father troubled by his daughter's rebellion.
It's your fault for raising her like that.
He blamed me for it. The thread that had barely held me together was snapped at that point. I didn't want to deal with him and Pat anymore. He was nothing but cruel to insist that her allergy was coming from her selfishness. It would have been better not to have a father who only flatters his mother and hurts his daughter. I definitely did not plan to be dragged down with their squandering either. I stared straight at David. She is a good girl. Who the hell are you constantly pamper your mother and forget about your daughter's allergies?
Whose money do you think you're living on?
My own. His face turned red and blue like traffic lights. In fact, I hadn't received any living expenses from him for the past 3 months. Pat's purchases increased, and all his salary was going to pay the bills. I didn't care about that anymore.
Get out! If you disagree with me, get out of the house!
Sure, please go through these then.
What is it?
Taking the opportunity, I quickly took out the divorce papers from my bag. The day after he took Emily's room for his mother, I visited an attorney's office. Although I had hoped that I wouldn't have to go through with it at that time, I was glad that I was not mistaken in my decision after all. His eyes looked as if they would pop out of his head. He must have thought that I would quiet down if he threatened me. It was too bad for him and was fortunate for me. I will get out of here as soon as I can.
You are going to regret this.
David was too proud to back down and snatched the papers roughly from my hand. I will come back later to pick up our belongings. Of course, I will leave everything else.
You better.
Don't touch my stuff. Yeah. I walked out of the dining room, leaving David, who brushed me away while twitching the corner of his mouth. Pat had started putting crab legs into the wobbly boiling pot. She obviously didn't care whether her granddaughter cried or her son divorced as long as she had a place to live that satisfied her needs. I packed the bare necessities and left the house with Emily. When I peeked into the dining room, I saw a red-faced man downing a crab leg with a beer, and an old woman unobtrusively breaking the shell. My decision was not a mistake. I was reassured. After that, I left Emily with my parents, took a leave from work, and ran around looking for a new place to live. I was lucky enough to find a charming house and asked a friend to help me move. 20 days after I left David, I moved my belongings out of the house while he was at work. Pat was usually in front of the TV, but she was not home at that time. I had invited her to a full-day spa a few days ago. She ordered way too many things and didn't remember what she actually bought. She must have enjoyed the bus tour without a care. I put all our possessions in the truck and returned to the new home. That night, I got a call from furious David.
What the hell happened in my house? You were supposed to take only your stuff, you thief!
I was fighting back the laughter at the expected turn of events. I intentionally made an indifferent voice and gave him the reality check. Yes, we only moved our stuff. What's wrong?
No, you didn't.
Washing machine, TV, refrigerator, oven, vacuum cleaner, computer, sofa, dining table, car, and some other things were all bought by me and my parents. Any objection?
Is that right?
Yes, they were all bought by me and my parents. His house was left with cardboard boxes and health appliances piled up in the empty rooms. When he had to take out the loan to buy the house, I helped with the furniture and appliances to save him money. My in-laws enjoyed splurging on themselves, but the idea of giving a gift or helping others never occurred to them. They didn't help us financially, but they also didn't interfere in our lives either. I never complained about them, but I had no idea that it was going to come back to him and Pat in such a strange way. I left you the house you bought and everything your mother bought. What are you complaining about? What's wrong with that?
No, I mean, it's just...
It's okay. Your mother will watch TV and will take note of what you guys need to buy on the internet. Oh, you have to buy your TV first. You can afford the latest model with your income, can't you? Your mother is lucky to have such a reliable son.
Yeah, but...
The robot vacuum will do the cleaning for you. She has 3. Oh, But you might want to clean up the boxes out of their way. They're kind of cute, like pets. You should buy a refrigerator soon. Frozen crabs and shellfish will thaw, so you'd better eat them as soon as possible. Also, those fish fillets and meat, and I think there are frozen waffles and veggies too. Oh, no microwave oven? You can substitute it with an electric pot you guys were using the other day. Oh, but there's no dining table. Well, you'll make it work. I'm going out for a steak dinner with Emily tonight.
Wait a minute.
We're having a party for our fresh start. You should too. We'll talk about child support next week with my attorney. I'm off now, yay!
Hey, wait!
Leaving behind a squeal of delight that I let out unintentionally, I hung up the call. It was February, but everything I took out of the freezer in the morning was going to thaw in no time. Pat must have been devastated that her favorite TV was gone. I also took out her favorite lamp and down quilt. I imagined them struggling with anger and despair in the empty house, which made me feel a bit better. Then, as I had declared, we discussed child support at my attorney's office. David looked a little worn out, but he didn't want to be seen as a loser, and agreed to the divorce with an air of disregard. He shouldn't have had a problem buying everything with his salary and Pat's pension, but they were the kind of people who managed to create one. That was one of the reasons I decided to divorce him. Since then, every time I saw him for a bi-weekly visit with my daughter, his complexion became worse. Pat's squandering got worse, mistaking that her son chose her over his wife and daughter, which gave her the right to spend money. The fact that she no longer had me to nag her also accelerated her habits. When David came to realize, his savings had run out. In addition, there were still plenty of loans left over from when they bought new furniture, appliances, and a new car. He finally understood that he was in serious trouble and issued a shopping ban. Pat became outraged for not having her needs satisfied, and he was angry at her for not listening to him. They apparently fought every day. When she realized that he wasn't going to budge, she took her wallet and went on binge shopping at the supermarket and drugstore. She especially favored a dollar shop and bought whatever she wanted. She was not only wasting money, but also increasing the clutter at an extraordinary speed. Their house overflowed like her hoarder's residence. She even bought tons of food, so they went bad before they were consumed. When David had enough and took away her wallet, she cried to the neighbors and caused a commotion. There was even a time when the authorities had to intervene. She deceived everyone by playing a pitiful elderly woman whose son stole her pension. They all blamed David, and she got her wallet back. She immediately ran to a dollar shop with great joy. In the end, David only had a year of child visitation. From the second year, child support payments fell behind, and Emily didn't wish to see him. My earnings alone were enough, so there was no problem for me. In truth, my life became financially and mentally easier without Pat, who never helped me with housework, but only spent money. Emily gradually gained back her cheerfulness. I was very glad that we didn't stay in that house for longer. 5 years after the divorce, "Here it is, Mom. I have been accepted. Oh my God." Emily receives an acceptance letter from the private high school of her choice. We jump up and down and embrace each other. She has worked exceptionally hard over the past years. She suppressed her desire to play with her friends or to give up and put all her effort into achieving her goal. I too supported her dream to come true by working harder and taking her to and from activities. It was achieved by us, mother and daughter working hand in hand. Of course, the past 5 years have not been all fun and games. I've struggled to handle my adolescent daughter and had a hard time with the coldness of the public view towards single mothers. What has been keeping me going is surprisingly David.
It's not easy being a single parent, right? My mom is in a facility now, so come back to me. And I have to prepare to welcome you guys back. Send me money.
I'm filled every time he sends me these foolish messages. Pat was indeed spiteful, but he still doesn't seem to understand that he was the culprit who neglected his daughter to look good in front of his mother. Anyway, right before he asked me to get back together with him, I witnessed Pat shopping at the dollar shop. I know that he is in so much trouble that he is selling his house. The two of them who live their lives without effort and remorse, but only with their selfish desire, will continue to fall to the bottom. That is a trivial matter for me now. Emily's smile is shining brightly as she has been accepted after much effort. That is enough to make me happy. So who wants a steak dinner for celebration? Yes, meat! I take her hand and we walk under the burning red sky at sunset. Her hand, which I haven't held in a long time, has grown bigger than mine. I feel a warmth deep in my chest.
My husband and his mistress hid from me on the balcony in Sub-Zero while his mom was looking up at them.
No, I don't want your wife to find out about this. She won't. She's working hard right now. Let's just have fun. Oh my God. I know already. I muttered to myself in disgust. I left work early and came home. Then I heard voices that sounded like something out of porn coming from my bedroom. My life all of a sudden became a daytime soap opera. Unaware of my presence outside the door, the voices were getting steamier. Yes, more jesting. What a naughty girl. Burning in hatred, nausea surged through me. I loathed him for calling his mistress a naughty girl while we had a small daughter. I looked down at the lacy underwear in the corridor and clenched my fists. Then I took a deep breath to retaliate. I don't mean to brag, but I thought we were a picture-perfect family. My husband Justin, our daughter, and I lived harmoniously. He was a very handsome father. Our daughter Kat was a little shy, but growing up healthy. She was about to start kindergarten, and I was sure she would get over her shyness. My relationship with my mother-in-law was also excellent. We lived nearby, so we often visited each other. Justin's parents divorced a long time ago. His mother Susan lived alone. She was a very independent person and enjoyed her own life without being dependent on her only son. I learned of her good character as soon as I met her for the first time. Justin and I met on a dating app. We both enjoyed camping and started talking through that connection. Eventually, we started meeting in real life and became an official couple after we went camping together. Marriage popped into both our minds at one point. I was honestly worried when we were about to meet each other's family. Meeting people on an app was normal in our generation, but it was not the case for my parents. Frankly speaking, they were reluctant at first, and Justin must have felt bad. On the contrary, Susan was the total opposite. That's nice. I envy you guys. My generation didn't have such a way of meeting people. You don't think it's weird? No way. Times change, and so does the way of encounters. Besides, you seem to be a nice girl, so I can trust you with him. I was so relieved to hear that, and the tears welled up involuntarily in my eyes. From that day on, we got along so well. It sounds so stuffy to be called Mrs. Morrison. Call me Susan. After she asked me to call her by first name, I think we got to know each other better. She was a curious person by nature and learned to be familiar with SNS in no time. She started learning photography at the same time and uploaded the photos she took on her page. She even took cats out often, telling me to cherish my alone time. They seemed to enjoy each other's company, and I could take a breather while they were out. I was surprised at how well our marriage was going. Although I had been a full-time housewife since our marriage. When Kat started kindergarten, I took a part-time job. I had been a licensed pharmacist, so I quickly found a place to work. I didn't mind being at home, but it was fulfilling to make use of my qualifications. Susan came to visit me once in a while, and my work days were quite enjoyable. However, something terrible happened to those peaceful days. That day, I had a sore throat from the morning. By lunchtime, I was coughing non-stop. Hey, are you okay? It's not that busy today. You can leave early. I'm sorry. May I take your word for it? Of course. Get better soon. I thanked my manager and left work quickly. While waiting for the elevator at my apartment, I sent a message to Susan asking if she could pick Kat up. I was relieved when she immediately agreed. I had been working extra shifts, so maybe I was just getting tired. I thought to ask Justin to come home on time as the elevator door opened. The moment I got into it, I frowned at the overwhelming sweet scent of perfume. I wondered if the person before me was wearing it. It was an unusual scent. I got off my floor and arrived at my door. As soon as I opened it, a pair of unfamiliar pumps came into view. Next to them were Justin's leather shoes, which were not supposed to be there. You're kidding, right? I went inside quietly and gently closed the door. I looked down the hallway and saw a flashy, shocking pink coat thrown on the floor. I struggled to keep myself from collapsing and walked toward the bedroom. My suspicions were confirmed. No, I don't want your wife to find out about this. She won't. She's working hard right now. Let's just have fun. Oh my God. I know already. I came home and heard voices that sounded like something out of a poem coming from our bedroom. My life all of a sudden became a daytime soap opera. Unaware of my presence outside the door, their voices were getting steamier. Yes, more Justin. What a naughty girl. His voice disgusted me so badly. I loathed him for calling his mistress a naughty girl while we had a small daughter. I looked down at the lacy underwear in the hallway and clenched my fists. Then I took a deep breath to retaliate. I'm home, I shouted and stamped my feet on the spot. At that moment, the voices in the bedroom died down. The reaction was so obvious that I was amazed, and I almost burst out into laughter. Is that you, Justin? I continued and finally heard a voice from inside saying, Shit. That pretty much explains the situation correctly. It was unjustifiable, and I was standing in the doorway. The only place to hide was in the bedroom closet. I was curious how he was going to excuse himself. Then I heard the balcony window open. I didn't think they would escape outside. I thought it was such a childish act as I opened the bedroom door wide. There, I saw a messy bed and hastily closed the curtain. I stared at the window and saw two buttocks peeking through. Stifling a giggle, I went near the window and called Justin's name again. I found a small brand name bag under the bed. There was a small wallet and a phone inside. The phone displayed a message from Justin. Room 502 was the room number of our apartment. It was clear that he had invited the woman home. However, this alone was not enough to prove his adultery. There was no way to unlock the password to her phone, so I looked at his phone, which was tucked between the sheets. I easily opened it using Kat's birthday. There was an icon I didn't recognize. When I opened it, I found that it was an app that deleted messages after a certain amount of time. He had been communicating with her there. I took a screenshot and sent it to my phone. I also took a picture of the driver's license that was in her wallet. I had all the evidence I needed. Then I received a message from Susan. The content was that she would be arriving soon. Although I hesitated for a bit, I sent the evidence of Justin's affair to her as well. I added a note asking her to look on the balcony. After a while, the doorbell rang. I opened the door to find Susan frowning. For some reason, she had an SLR camera hanging around her neck. "Hi, Debbie." I left Kat with the superintendent, so she didn't see anything. I appreciate that. I'm sorry I dragged you into this. It's okay. I never thought I'd see my own child looking so foolish. Where is he? Still out on the balcony. When she went into the bedroom, Justin and his mistress were frantically banging on the window. He was sniffling from the cold and shouting apologies, but I was a little horrified by the maniac look on his face. I took a step backward, and Susan took strides toward the window. "Debbie, what do you want to do? We can leave them out like this." If he agrees to a divorce, I'm willing to let them in." "Oh no, I apologize. Let's talk first. You want to spend the night there? Be my guest." "Oh, okay. I agree." As soon as she unlocked the door, they rolled into the room. The way they were covering themselves with the blanket, shivering and shaking, was almost a little pitiful. But Susan was relentless. "Sit, you stupid thing." At the sound of her voice, both of them straightened their posture with pale faces. "Justin, you know why your dad and I divorced, right? Tell me." It was his infidelity. No way. I couldn't believe my ears when I heard the reason for the first time. His parents split up because of his dad's affair, and I couldn't believe he did the same thing. She fiercely scolded him, and then did the same to the mistress as well. To my surprise, she was married. She was his ex-coworker, who had left the job after getting married. Susan continued to lecture them for the next hour, and then the mistress left wearing the soaking wet clothes. When I tried to speak to him about the divorce, Justin started saying I had no proof. I showed him the screenshot, and Susan took pictures of them on the balcony with her camera. She had originally brought it to take pictures of Kat and use it at a moment's notice. I was surprised at how well it captured the scene without any blurriness, and was impressed by her skill. After that, Kat and I stayed with Susan. A week later, she and I took the divorce papers to Justin and stood firmly in front of him. Susan introduced me to a lawyer who explained that I could get alimony for sure. I made it clear to Justin at that point. Perhaps that was why he was reluctant to go through it. I mean, it was only for the last half a year or so. Why can't you forgive me? Are you serious? I'm just saying that you should take that into consideration. You're so stubborn. Don't make excuses for yourself. Susan yelled at him, and he finally started reading the papers. I had learned that she was unimaginably scary when she got angry. After that, I, under the advice of my lawyer, requested temporary court orders for custody and child support. I heard that he was depressed about the amount of alimony, but that was no longer my concern. The case was sparked unexpectedly. Look, Debbie, it's Justin in the video. Susan showed me her SNS screen, which showed a video of the full scene on the balcony that day. I checked the account name that uploaded it, and it was my next door neighbor. Come to think of it, she talked a lot about herself being an influencer. Justin deserved what happened to him, but the video was taken from an angle that could easily identify the apartment building. I thought other tenants would have been inconvenienced. I requested to the platform that the video be removed, which was easily granted. Not only that, but the neighbor's account was removed as well. It became a big deal somehow, but I was relieved to have it done anyway. A year later, my divorce is finalized, and Kat and I have been living in a new apartment. I have a new full-time job now. I'm busy with work and raising my child. Although I was worried about her, she has adjusted to her new environment more easily than I expected. We continue to have a good relationship with Susan too. After the video fiasco, I was much appreciated by my ex-neighbors. The supposed influencer had been bragging about herself everywhere and was seen as a nuisance. Some of Justin's co-workers saw the video, and rumors spread quickly. He was asked to resign for damaging his company's image. He also ended up separating from his mistress. He apparently visited Susan for help, but she turned him away by dumping a bucket of water on him from the balcony. Just imagining the scene was amusing, and I couldn't help but laugh. Now there's laundry to do. Today is my day off, and Kat is out with Susan. It's the perfect day to get the accumulated chores done. I tried to go out on the balcony to sun the pillows, but my legs freeze. I see Justin frantically tapping on the window. I was so desperate that I didn't think of it. Looking back, he could have attacked me. He has lost his job and his credibility now. There might be a chance that he resents me and comes to my house. I chose an apartment building with a good security system in place and a room with a balcony facing the main street. I realized that the scars he has left on me are much deeper than I thought. I take a deep breath and go out on the balcony. It's a beautiful day with a clear blue sky. I feel my phone vibrate in my pocket. It's Susan. Wow, so nice. There's a picture of Kat smiling broadly in a flower field.
My husband treats me horribly, so when we fought, I decided to leave him and told my mom what happened. As a result,
Well then, I'll go home to my parents' house.
That's right. Don't ever come back here. If you're just going to leave, then why don't you just sign these divorce papers?
Saying that, my husband, Hunter, took out the divorce papers from the drawers which he had prepared behind my back. I picked them up and signed my part. And then I went back to my parents' house and told my mother what had happened. Then, a few days later, my husband suddenly came to my parents' house.
Hey, what the hell is going on here? Why did I get fired from my company?
Well, it's all your fault. You deserve what you got. My name is Carolyn. I am 30 years old and I work in a company. I am now married for 2 years to my husband, Hunter. Things were going reasonably well at first, but we gradually began to grow apart and we started to have arguments more and more. We first met at a blind date, which was held through a friend of mine. That is when I first met Hunter, who was the same age as me. He kept on talking to me, and gradually, we started to meet up more frequently on our own. Then, we began to officially go out, and we ended up getting married. I was 28 at the time, and I was worried and being impatient about getting married. I think one of the reasons I was worried and impatient was that many people around me had already been married for several years now, and some even had children. I tried not to tell Hunter that I really wanted to get married as soon as possible, so as not to put any weird pressure on him. So I was really happy when he proposed to me on his own. And there is another reason why I was happy when Hunter had proposed to me and when it was decided that we were getting married. It was because I got to reassure my mother with the news that I was getting married to Hunter. My mother raised me as a single mother, all on her own. My father had passed away of illness when I was still very young. So after that, my mother worked very hard to support me and take care of me. And it was all because of my mother I was able to go to a good college and become an adult properly. I wanted to show my mother how happy I was after I got married, to reassure her. When I informed my mother that I was getting married to Hunter, she was very happy. "Oh, you're finally getting married, huh, Carolyn? I'm really happy for you, sweetie. Oh, I wonder what I should wear for the wedding." Seeing my mother that happy made me happy too. Then, after meeting up with the parents and greeting them and meeting each other's families, the wedding ceremony was held without any issues. Seeing my mother cry when she saw me in my wedding dress, I cried too. "Oh, Carolyn, you're so beautiful." "Thank you so much, Mom. From now on, please have a happy married life with Hunter." "I will, for sure, Mom." After that, Hunter and I went on our honeymoon, and we began our life as husband and wife. We had a lot of fun and really enjoyed our times during our honeymoon and the early stages of our newlywed life. My husband and I both worked, but I think we did well sharing the house chores that we were both capable of. When I informed to my mother that we were happily married, she was very happy for both of us. "I am so glad that you have found your happiness, honey." "Well, next, it's your turn, Mom." "What?" No way, no way. Getting married is not for me." "But you're going out with somebody at the moment, right?" "Yes, but I'm already at this age, you know." "What are you talking about? You're still very young, you know." My mother was 52 at the time, and it's only really normal for her to get remarried. I mean, Age has nothing to do with love or marriage. Maybe the person who you're with is already thinking about marrying you, Mom.
Oh, well, we'll see about that, honey.
Or are you playing with him, Mom?
Oh, don't say that, honey.
I know that's not true. I had found my happiness, so I wanted my mother to have a second life and be happy too. But before I could worry about my mother, something happened with Hunter and I. And it was all triggered by a trivial thing. Huh? You haven't done the laundry yet?
What? It's not my turn to do it today, right?
No, today is your turn, honey.
Huh? No way! It's not my turn.
Like this, we argued and had a fight for the first time since we got married. Look, see? I even have it written down here. I had written down my share of the house chores on my calendar. And that day was the day my husband was in charge of doing the laundry. When I showed him what I had written down, he turned really red and got angry again.
Shut up. That's not even really reliable.
What?
In any case, I won't be doing it, alright?
No way. Since Hunter refused to do the laundry like that, I had no choice but to do the laundry. But I was surprised by my husband's irrational temper. I had never seen my husband lose his temper like this when we were dating or even after we got married. Could it be that my husband's true nature was like this? That's what I began to think. After that, my husband stopped doing his share of the housework. Hey, I'm having a hard time because I'm the only one who has to do all these house chores.
Huh? Well, it's none of my business, and I couldn't care less. Normally, the wife should be doing the house chores, you know? I mean, you should be thankful that I've been helping out around the house until now.
I was so shocked by the huge change in my husband's terrible attitude. At that time, I considered divorcing him. But then, I had found out that I was pregnant in the midst of all this chaos. I was a little nervous about leaving Hunter at the time, as I was pregnant, and we were having a baby. And besides, I thought my husband might change his attitude if we had a baby. And plus, we had only been married for about 6 months or so at that time. And I thought my mother would be really sad if I divorced so quickly. For these and many other reasons, I decided not to divorce Hunter. When I told my husband that I was pregnant, he was very happy.
So, I'm going to be a father, huh? Then I have to do my best and work hard, definitely, huh?
I was so happy to hear Hunter say these things. Since then, my husband has been taking care of my health and has taken the initiative in doing the house chores frequently.
Carolyn, are you okay? If there's anything, please just let me know.
Yeah, thank you so much. Apparently, the birth of our baby brought Hunter back to himself, being really kind again. And I finally gave birth to our baby without any issues. A cute little girl was born.
Oh, wow. She looks just like an angel. She looks exactly like me. And she's so beautiful.
My husband was very happy about our daughter, and I thought we would be a really nice family together. But the reality doesn't always go the way you want it to be. Since this was my first time having a baby, I was just so busy in taking care of my daughter. She cried a lot at night, moved around a lot, and it was really hard to keep up with the house chores. But unfortunately, my husband did not appreciate what I did around the house at all. Hunter only cared for our daughter when he was in a good mood and gave the baby to me when she started to cry. He would then complain,
"Are you sure you're doing your house chores properly?"
to me. As you can imagine, I couldn't just sit back and take in everything Hunter was saying to me. Taking care of the baby is a lot difficult than you think, you know. And you have no idea how difficult it is to do these house chores on top of taking care of the baby, do you? You haven't helped me much with the house chores at all since our daughter was born.
That's because you're at home on maternity leave, so doing the house chores is your job, right? Besides, I'm out working, you know.
What? Then what are you going to do when I go back to work? My conditions and yours are the same, you know.
Shut the hell up. You're going to put our daughter into daycare, so nothing would change. Once you're done with your job and you're back at home, you're the one who's supposed to do all the house chores around the house.
Saying that, Hunter went off to his room. I was deeply disappointed in my husband. He was such a selfish person. Maybe Hunter would not change even after our daughter was born. I thought of divorce, but I couldn't really do it because I hadn't been able to return to work yet. And I also didn't want my mother to worry about me. After that, Hunter and I became increasingly distant, and we stopped talking with each other. My husband started coming home late at night and felt as if he didn't want to go back home. And he started going out alone on weekends. But for my part, I am grateful that Hunter did that. Seeing my husband's face made me so angry and irritated, and I was happy to be alone with my daughter and be able to interact with her in a relaxed manner. So, I preferred not to have him around at all. Time passed by, and 2 years passed since we got married. My daughter is now 1 year old and growing little by little every day. My maternity leave will be over soon, and I plan to return to work. But then, something unexpected happened. My husband was having an affair behind my back. I was driving to dinner with my mother and my daughter around the town. Then, I saw my husband in the street, arm in arm, with a woman I didn't know. I was really surprised to see him that way, but strangely, I wasn't in a shock. In fact, I thought it might be a good opportunity for me. I then requested an investigation by a professional investigator. It turned out that my husband had been having an affair behind my back. I immediately questioned my husband about what I had found out. Hey, what is the meaning of this? When I showed him the evidence of the affair, he became upset for a moment, but then became defiant.
"Oh, so you caught me. Well, it's what it is, you know. I'm dating this cute girl."
You've got to be kidding me. You have a daughter too, remember? You really think that you can get away with this?
Well, it doesn't matter much anymore. We were already growing apart, and our relationship was broken off anyways. Right?
I can't believe that you're even acting this way. I thought Hunter would at least apologize to me, but he didn't even try to do that. At this point, my feelings I had for my husband were completely gone. Well then, I'll go home to my parents' house. I never want to be in the same space as Hunter anymore. When I said that to my husband, he shrugged his shoulders.
That's right. Don't ever come back here. If you're just going to leave, then why don't you just sign these divorce papers?
Saying that, my husband Hunter took out the divorce papers from the drawers which he had prepared behind my back. He really is a terrible man. I picked them up and signed my part. I packed my things and left the house with my daughter. Before arriving at my parents' house, I went to the town hall and submitted the divorce papers. Then, when I returned to my parents' house, I told my mother what had happened. My mother was surprised at what she heard, but she told me that it was the right thing to do for me to leave my husband because continuing such a married life would only lead to unhappiness. I then went to my lawyer and filed a claim for alimony against my husband and his mistress. Of course, I also demanded child support from my husband. My husband paid the alimony immediately, but the child support was too much for him to pay all at once, so I asked him to pay it in installments. But my revenge did not end there. With the help of a certain person, I had my husband punished. A few days later, my husband suddenly came to my parents' house.
Hey, what the hell is going on here?
What? Why did you come here all of a sudden?
Why did I get fired from my company? You did something, didn't you?
Oh, you're talking about that, huh? It's all your fault. You deserve what you got. You were just punished for having an affair.
No, wait a minute. You can't just fire someone for having an affair.
Well, that may be true. But I heard that you were having an affair with your colleague, who is way younger than you, and you were both doing all kinds of naughty things in the company, weren't you? You may think that you wouldn't be seen by people, but you can't definitely escape from the security cameras. You were clearly caught on video, committing indecent acts in public, and I also found out that you were sneaking out of the office and skipping work to do those things, which is why you were fired.
How come you have the access to these security camera footages? And why do you, who has nothing to do with the company, have the authority to fire me?
It wasn't me who fired you. It was the president of your company. And he is my mother's second husband, who also became my stepfather.
What?
My mother was a very beautiful woman, and she made her living by working at a pub all through my childhood. She still worked at that pub, and that's where she first met my stepfather a few years ago. They began to go out and they were in a relationship for a while, and now they just recently got married. After finding out about your affair, my mother told my stepfather about what was happening with you and I. And my stepfather had looked into who you were,
No way.
My stepfather said that he doesn't want someone who doesn't do his job and steals the money while doing naughty, terrible things at the company. It was then Hunter finally realized his situation and began to cry.
I'm sorry. Please forgive me. If I lose my job here, I'm gonna have a hard time making ends meet all at once. I won't even be able to pay my rent. I'll apologize. So can you please get back with me?
Hunter pleaded to me on his knees. But I knew that he didn't mean what he said. Actually, I believe that Hunter was acting that way because he found out that his ex-company's president was now my stepfather. And knowing that we're wealthy now, he's trying to get back so that he'd have a rich life with me. But I no longer have any feelings for my ex-husband. It is impossible for me to get back together with you, Hunter. I will never see you again, and you will pay me the child support for my daughter. And that's all I have to say. Now leave before I call the police. As I said this, my ex-husband left in a hurry. After that, my ex-husband was dumped by his mistress, and now he is jobless, alone and lonely, trying to pay for the child support. Meanwhile, I have returned to work, moved to an apartment near my office, and I am now living happily with my daughter. I will continue to work hard for her and watch her grow up. I was surprised that Carolyn's mom remarried to the president of her ex-husband's company. But I'm glad that the stepfather helped Carolyn to punish her crappy husband. I hope Carolyn continues to have a happy and joyful life with her daughter. Thank you for watching until the end. Please subscribe to our channel. We hope to see you in our next video.
My husband demands for divorce when I was hospitalized from being ill, all because of him, and as a result.
Here, I brought your change of clothes.
Thanks.
And here.
Huh? What's this? My husband Felix would say this as he smirks at me and handed me the divorce papers.
Hey, if we get divorced right now, you'd be in trouble, right? Now, do you see clearly the difference in where you and I stand?
Saying this, my husband immediately left the hospital room. My husband had visited me at the hospital to just feel superior without caring about my condition and how I was. My name is Hazel. I am 32 years old and I work in a company. It has been 3 years now since I got married to my husband, Felix. I first met Felix through a blind date, and he began to talk to me a lot. So after getting approached by him, we began to go out. And after going out for 6 months, Felix had proposed to me, and we got married. Since both Felix and I worked, we basically shared the house chores. But when one of us was busy at work, one of us would do the chores to support the other, and so on. And we spent our lives as a couple, taking care of each other. My husband was always kind to me, and even after 3 years of marriage, we were still getting along well. So I thought I had found the right person, or so I thought. One day, I came home from work really happy. I took off my shoes and hugged my husband at home with a huge smile on my face.
Oh, hey, what's going on?
Oh, listen, honey. I got a promotion.
What?
It's because my last project was a huge success, and my bosses acknowledged my hard work for it.
I see.
Until now, you have been earning more than me, Felix. So you had to pay a lot more for the living expenses and such. But now, we can finally split it in half. Let's celebrate by having steak today, okay? I even bought some really nice sirloin steak.
Oh, okay. I'm just going to go take a bath first.
I felt that my husband's reaction was somewhat weak, but at the time I thought he was just exhausted from work. Later, after I was promoted, my workload increased and I had more things to learn, so I continued to work overtime. So, as a result, I would end up coming home late from work. I'm home!
Oh, welcome home.
Where's dinner?
Oh, I already ate.
Huh?
There's still some ingredients left, so why don't you just quickly cook something easy and eat something?
My husband would say that while watching the TV without even looking at me. I wonder what's going on with him. Until now, if one of us had to work late, the one who arrived home first would make the meal and leave it for the other. But my husband was giving off an aura that told me not to talk to him. So I had no choice but to cook a simple meal. even though I was pretty exhausted from work. Oh, we're out of buns or bread. And I looked over our pantry, but we're also out of pasta too. Since there were no carbs that I could eat, the only option I ended up having was salad and yogurt.
What? You're eating only salad and yogurt? Will that be even enough for you, nutrition-wise? Usually, people who can do their work really well even pay close attention to what they eat, you know.
My husband, perhaps hearing the sound of me eating my salad, began to pick on me. It feels like he's trying to say something which would hurt my feelings. After that, my husband's attitude toward me became more and more terrible. Hey, please don't leave your clothes all over the place.
Huh? If they are in the way, why don't you just put them into the laundry basket?
Hey, today's the day you are in charge of doing the house chores, right?
What? Women are supposed to do the house chores. So, don't you dare depend on me to do any house chores.
Excuse me?
Are you just getting carried away because you got a promotion?
That's not true.
Huh, we'll see about that. Anyway, I'm not doing any house chores anymore, alright?
What?
From today, all the house chores are your job, since you're the woman.
No way. Then, my husband really actually stopped doing anything around the house and left all the house chores to me. So, I had to do all the housework, and it became quite physically demanding. Since I work overtime most weekdays, I can't really clean around the house. So I had to do most of the house chores on the weekends, and I couldn't really take any weekends off at all. Plus, I'm not sure if my husband was just being mean and doing it on purpose or not, but he made the room dirtier than ever, and it takes a lot of time to clean it up nicely nowadays. And at mealtime, Felix used to eat everything and say whatever I cooked tasted good. But recently, he started complaining about every little thing I cook. Felix would complain, saying things like how it's tasteless, or it wouldn't taste good, or the next day he would say it tastes too strong, and so on. And he would also complain about me at every chance he has.
You can't even do your house chores properly, so I wonder why you even got promoted. Your company is going to go bankrupt, probably.
My husband looks so happy when he looks down on me like that. How on earth did Felix become such a person? One day, I was so exhausted physically and mentally that I collapsed at work due to severe abdominal pain caused by the stress from overworking. And because of that, I was rushed to the hospital. According to the doctor's diagnosis, I had a stomach ulcer. I was told that I would need to stay in the hospital for a few days and I had to prepare a change of clothes. I didn't want to, but the only person that I could rely on was my husband at the moment, so I decided to contact him. I really wanted to contact my parents, but they were really old and couldn't really move around freely because of how old they were, and I felt bad about calling them for something as trivial as this. I called my husband, but he was at work, so he didn't answer right away. Then, after leaving a few incoming calls, I received a call back from my husband, and he sounded really annoyed and irritated.
What the hell is wrong with you? I'm at work, you know.
Sorry, I just got rushed to the hospital and I have to be in there for a few days.
What the? You're hospitalized? What the hell did you do? Why are you being hospitalized?
I got a stomach ulcer from all the stress. Then, my husband started to talk while he laughed.
Seriously? A stomach ulcer? Maybe you're not cut out for your job after all. Because, you worked a little bit of overtime and you got a stomach ulcer from that, right? If you ever get promoted to an even higher position, your stomach will probably come out of your mouth, won't it?
Stop being so mean to me. In any case, I need you to bring me a change of clothes.
What a pain in the ass. Fine, I'll do it.
Thank you. Please. I'm just glad my husband did what I asked him to do anyway. A few hours later, my husband came to the hospital room after work.
Here, I brought your change of clothes.
Thanks.
And here.
Huh? What's this? My husband Felix would say this as he smirks at me and handed me the divorce papers.
Hey, if we get divorced right now, you'd be in trouble, right? Now, do you see clearly the difference in where you and I stand? Alright? This is a warning that I'm willing to divorce you at any time. If you understand, you better reflect on that while you're in the hospital.
Saying this, my husband immediately left the hospital room. My husband had visited me at the hospital to just feel superior without caring about my condition and how I was. So, no wonder Felix agreed to bring a change of clothes to me like that. I was feeling sick from the stress and everything that was happening, so I headed to the bathroom. Then, through the window, I suddenly saw the hospital's parking lot. Oh, that's my husband's car. My husband was walking to his car. Oh? A woman came out from his car? Who the heck is she? Oh, whoa. Did they just started to kiss? Then they both got into the car and the car drove away from the hospital parking lot. What I saw was pretty much my husband having an affair with another woman I've never seen before. I was so stressed out because of Felix that I even got sick and hospitalized like this. And now, he's just having an affair with another woman? I felt empowered to get out of the hospital as soon as possible and get a divorce from Felix. I had let my husband's change in attitude get the better of me, and I had let him say whatever he wanted to say to me, but I was going to gather evidence and get out of this hellhole. After that, I was discharged from the hospital, so I packed my belongings and went back to my parents' house. I was lucky that the day I left the hospital was on a weekday. I was able to easily move my stuff out without my husband finding out. A couple of days passed, but I didn't hear from my husband as he didn't even try to contact me. He probably thinks I don't matter and thinks that I'm still in the hospital. But you would normally notice if the things of that person who you were living with was gone. I guess that's how much Felix really have lost interest in me. I had the investigators look into Felix's affair right after I left the hospital. But it seems to be taking longer than expected. My husband seems to be quite careful about being caught, and even after a few weeks, he still doesn't seem to be showing any hints or trails about the affair. Perhaps it was quite a miracle that I saw him kissing with another woman through the hospital room window at that time. I guess because Felix thought that I was being hospitalized, I wouldn't notice about him having an affair with another woman at the parking lot. Before I could get proof of the affair, my husband finally contacted me.
Hey, where the hell are you now? I checked with the hospital and they said you left the hospital a long time ago.
You finally realized, huh? I'm at my parents' house currently, and I won't be going back to our house anymore.
What the hell are you saying? Stop being ridiculous and just come back here.
No, I will not. I don't want to live with someone like you anymore. Please mail those divorce papers to my parents' house.
You've got to be kidding me. We're not getting a divorce, and you're going to live in my house as the housekeeper. If you're going to divorce me, then you better quit your job.
Excuse me?
I just can't stand that you got a promotion. Because you can't be a wife and earn as much as your own husband.
He must be a psycho. So the reason for my husband's change in attitude was him just being jealous about me and my promotion, huh? This makes me feel more and more like I need to get a divorce. How could I possibly agree to such ridiculous terms?
Shut the hell up. Either you don't divorce me and do everything in this house, or you quit your job and divorce me.
With saying just that, my husband hung up the phone. I knew that Felix would never divorce me if I just stayed this way. While I was in a hurry to decide what to do, the investigation agency finally caught the moment when Felix was having an affair with his mistress. Perhaps he was caught off guard by the fact that I was back at my parents' home, or perhaps he was frustrated by the arguments we just had. He had invited the mistress to our house, and the investigators succeeded in capturing the moment she entered the house in photos and videos. After I obtained these evidence, I hired a lawyer and began to prepare for a divorce. Then, I went with my lawyer to the house where I lived with my husband for the first time in a long time.
Oh, so you're finally going to give up and obey me?
No, I had made up my mind. I made up my mind to divorce you. Hearing this, my husband frowned.
So, if you're choosing to divorce me, are you going to quit your job?
Nope, I will not quit my job.
Huh? You really don't listen, do you? You better think again.
I ignored my husband's statement and had my lawyer come inside.
What the? Who the hell is he?
He's my lawyer. Hearing the word lawyer, my husband froze. Then we went into the living room and proceeded to talk while sitting down. My husband looked somewhat uncomfortable and awkward. I guess he didn't expect me to bring my lawyer. I spread the evidence photos on the table without paying any attention to him.
This is
the evidence of your affair. We already know that you are having an affair with your colleague who is much younger than you from the company. My husband's face grew pale.
No, this is wrong.
You can't just call her over to this house and then get away with it. Then I had my lawyer make it clear to my husband that what he did was wrong and that this was a divorce case. Then my husband suddenly started crying and got down on his knees.
I'm so sorry. I was seduced. So please don't divorce me. Please forgive me.
My husband grabbed my hand as he apologized repeatedly. But there was no way I would forgive him ever. No matter how many times he apologized, it's useless. Just sign the divorce papers already. You'll have to pay me alimony too. My husband apologized again and again and persisted. But when my lawyer said, if you don't do this, you will go to court and many people will know about it, he instantly looked up and said, I don't want that, and finally signed the divorce papers. Thus, I was finally able to divorce my husband. My ex-husband said,
please don't ever tell the company about what had happened.
But I don't know where his mistress lives. So I sent a content certified letter to the mistress's workplace. Well, after all, that was also my ex-husband's workplace. So Felix and his mistress's relationship soon spread throughout the whole company. My ex-husband called me to protest.
That's not what you told me.
But I hung up the phone and rejected the call, saying, I just sent the content certified mail to your mistress, but I didn't directly spread your affair to the company. Actually, I have an acquaintance at my ex-husband's workplace, and it seems that both my ex-husband and his mistress are getting cold stares from their colleagues. As a result, Felix's mistress resigned on her own, and my ex-husband was offered to be transferred to a regional office. Both of them have to pay alimony to me, so they can't afford to live luxuriously. They both got what they deserved. On the other hand, now that I am free from the stress caused by my ex-husband, I can finally concentrate more on my work. Thanks to the promotion, my income has risen considerably, and I have been taking my parents on nice trips recently, so I have been taking care of them well, I hope. Since I've had enough with my love life for the time being, I will continue to devote myself to my work and cherish the time I have with my parents. Thank you for watching until the end. Please subscribe to our channel. We hope to see you in our next video. My beloved father passed away. He was a famous person. As I was conducting the funeral service as a mourner, my husband whispered to me in the middle of the service,
"Hey, how much was your father's inheritance? Must be quite a lot, right?"
I was crestfallen at the tone of his voice, which could not hide his excitement. Should he really be bringing this up now, and in the middle of his father-in-law's funeral?
Tell me without beating around the bush. Maybe you haven't confirmed it yet? If that's the case, I'll help out too. Man, I wish this funeral would wrap up already.
At that moment, I reached my limit. Is that the kind of thing to say to someone grieving the loss of their father? I quickly suppressed my anger and responded like this. My father has debts, so I'm going to renounce my inheritance. At that moment, my husband, who had been speaking softly until then, suddenly raised his voice.
What? Then what was the point of getting married?
Huh?
I married you because you're the daughter of a famous celebrity, right? Otherwise, who would choose a plain woman like you?
I see. So that's your true nature. With that, my husband stormed out of the funeral hall, still seething with anger. However, a month later, he learned the truth and turned pale. My name is Heather Stewart. I'm a 28-year-old part-time housewife. I had a somewhat unusual upbringing. You see, my father is a well-known figure in the media. His stage name is Silas King. Think of him as an actor or singer. My mother married such a father at a young age and gave birth to me, her only daughter. My mother was a kind and beautiful person, and we were financially blessed, a happy family. However, when I was in elementary school, my mother became ill and passed away. At the time, my father and I grieved together. After that, my father tried his best not to show his sorrow in front of me. My father was a busy man, but he always made time for me. While he usually relied on my paternal grandmother and the maid, he always attended my school events. My father was my beloved pride and joy. However, as I entered adolescence, his presence sometimes felt like a hindrance.
I saw your old man on TV yesterday. Was he saying something like this?
From classmates who knew about my relationship with my father, I would sometimes get teased or have my father brought up.
Even though you're the daughter of that Silas King, you seem kinda plain. It's disappointing.
There were times when I was subjected to expectations and disappointments without any say in the matter. I grew to dislike that and ended up saying to my father, "Don't come to school events, I hate you. I wish Mom were here instead." When I remember my father's hurt expression at that moment, my heart still aches, even now. As I entered high school, people around me started gathering around for my father's fame and money.
Hey, what's it like at Silas King's place?
Let Heather treat us.
She's the daughter of a celebrity, so she must have some money, right?
I was only able to form interpersonal relationship in this way. By that time, I had stopped resenting my father, but I was still only seen as the daughter of that Mr. Silas King. That was hard and sad for me. Wanting to change such an environment, I deliberately decided to apply to university in a rural area, even though I'm from New York City. My father told me,
I want you to stay in New York City.
But I didn't change my mind. Going where nobody knew about my relationship with my father and accepting me for who I am. Such was my wish. In the end, my father understood and I was admitted, so I started living alone in a distant place from my father. My university life afterwards was enjoyable. I made sure not to let my secret slip, but I confided in close friends about my father's true identity. Everyone was surprised, but they didn't act obsessed. Instead, they quietly respected my privacy. Living apart from my father was lonely, but I finally attained the lifestyle I desired. Even afterwards, I stayed in frequent contact with my father, and he occasionally visited me in secret.
Heather, your dad is always on your side. Even though we're far apart, I'm always thinking of you.
Thanks, Dad. You can think about getting remarried or something now, okay? Dad, you're quite popular, you know.
No, for me, there's only ever been your mother for a lifetime. And as for children, you're all I need.
I deeply respected such a father. As I spent my university life in the countryside, I began to develop an attachment to this place, and I decided I wanted to work here. My father supported my decision, so I landed a job at a major company in the countryside. At my workplace, I didn't disclose that I was Silas King's daughter. Therefore, everyone treated me like a regular person. I worked hard for a few years. Before I knew it, I was in my mid-20s and still single. Although I had a boyfriend during college, we had long since parted ways. I started thinking maybe it's time to start dating someone. Thinking about such things, I decided to join a local working professionals social club, hoping it would be a chance to meet new people. There I met Sean, who later became my husband.
Heather, actually, I've been interested in you for a while. If you're okay with it, could we exchange contact information?
When Sean, whom I had only regarded as a member of the club, said that, my heart raced. We exchanged contact information and started dating. Sean worked as a sales representative for a small to mid-sized company, and he had a bright and friendly personality. He was popular in the club and was well trusted by those around him. I found myself increasingly drawn to Sean's charms. He didn't know I was Silas King's daughter, yet he treated me kindly, which made me happy. During our relationship, there were times when I hesitated to reveal the truth about my father. However, I was scared of how Sean might react if he found out, so I kept quiet about my father being Silas King. After a year and a half of dating, Sean proposed to me.
Heather, I love you. Let's get married and be happy together.
Sean, thank you. I love you too. When I accepted the proposal, Sean seemed genuinely happy.
Oh, I'm glad. I'm really happy. I should go meet your dad right away. He's a single parent, right?
Yeah, that's right, but meeting my dad might be a bit surprising.
Huh? Your dad? Why?
Let's just meet him first. He's a kind person. And so, without revealing that my father was Silas King, I decided to introduce Sean to him. When we arrived at my family's home in New York City, Sean was speechless.
Wow, this is an amazing mansion. Are you a rich heiress?
Well, let's just go inside and meet my father for now, okay? When Sean saw my father, he was so shocked he almost lost his balance.
Could it be Mr. Silas King? Nice to meet you, Sean. I've heard about you from my daughter.
Seeing his surprise, my father smiled and eased his tension.
I've heard that you've been good to my daughter without knowing she's mine. I want her to be happy because I've caused her pain in the past because of me. I can trust a young man like you with her. Mr. King, Dad, I'll make sure to make Heather happy.
Listening to the conversation between my father and Sean, I felt happy. I'm glad I chose him over someone superficial. I'm sure we'll be happy from now on. I believed that without any doubt. After returning to the countryside where we originally lived, we registered our marriage. We received blessings from both families and had a small wedding ceremony with only close relatives. Renting an apartment, Sean and I began a happy life together. That's what I thought, but reality was different. Sean didn't do any household chores at all. Even though we both worked, he ignored my requests to share the tasks. He pushed everything onto me. What's more, just 3 months after our marriage, Sean suddenly said this.
I quit my job, Heather. From now on, I'll be a full-time house husband.
Huh? What about me? What about money?
Well, if we're in trouble, just ask your dad for help.
Are you saying I can take advantage of my father because he's famous? Even when I was angry, Sean just smirked and shrugged it off. And even as a full-time husband, Sean didn't do any chores. Instead, it seemed like he went out somewhere to play while I wasn't around, and then he'd ask me for money. I was really troubled by all of this. So I ended up venting about Sean's foolishness to my father over the phone. He suddenly quits his job, he's never home, I'm really in trouble. My father then soothed me.
Well, married couples should help each other's out, so let's wait and see for a while.
Yeah, you're right. Thank you. Dad, take care of yourself at work too. At that time, I didn't imagine that those would be our last words to each other. 1 month later, while I was at work, I received a call from a hospital in New York City.
Your father was rushed to the emergency room due to a heart attack. I'm sorry, but...
My mind went blank, and I accidentally dropped my phone. I then took Sean and headed immediately to New York City. By the time we arrived, my father had already become cold. The cause of death was an unknown heart failure. I cried while clinging to my father. Even though I haven't been filial to him, to suddenly pass away like this. However, I can't keep grieving forever. I began preparing for the funeral. I talked with my father's manager, and it was decided that the funeral would be a private affair for relatives only, while the agency would hold a separate farewell events for the fans. My father's passing was reported in the news, and social media was filled with lamenting voices. I once again realized that my father was a beloved figure to many. On the night of the wake, I went back to my parents' home to fetch some necessary items. As I opened the drawer in my father's study, I was astonished by what I found there. There was something extraordinary in it. The day of the farewell ceremony arrived. As a mourner, I was busy moving around. Sitting in the seat of the bereaved, I lowered my head to the relatives offering condolences. Beside me sat Sean, but when no one else was around, Sean discreetly whispered something in my ear.
Hey, how much was your father's inheritance? Must be quite a lot, right?
I was crestfallen at the tone of his voice, which could not hide his excitement. Should he really be bringing this up now? And in the middle of his father's-in-law's funeral?
Maybe you haven't checked yet? Well, if that's the case, I can help out too. I wish this funeral would end soon.
I reached my limit at this moment. Are those the words to say to me grieving the loss of my father? I quickly suppressed my anger and retorted. I'm going to renounce my inheritance because my father has debts.
Huh?
He was a celebrity, so he seems to have been reckless with money. It's troubling, isn't it? When I said that, my husband, who had been speaking softly until then, suddenly raised his voice.
Huh? Then what's the point of being married?
Huh?
I married you because you're Silas King's daughter, you know? Otherwise, who would choose a plain girl like you?
I see. So that's your true nature.
Yeah, that's right. I got close to you after researching your identity on the internet. I've been good to you all this time because I thought I could get a share of your parents' wealth. What a disappointment it turned out to be.
It turned out that Sean knew my father's true identity from the beginning and approached me knowing it. I was both shocked and deeply disappointed. Was his surprise during the first meeting with my father all an act? He had been deceiving me all along, even during our relationship. Is that all you have to say? He then told me in response to my question.
There's no use for you anymore since you won't inherit anything. I'll send you divorce papers, so don't come back to that house again.
I see. Understood. Let's get divorced. Sean kicked the folding chair hard and stormed out of the funeral hall. Without trying to stop him, I lowered my head in the bustling hall and proceeded with the funeral. By the time the funeral settled down, the signed divorce papers had arrived at my parents' house. During Sean's absence, I returned to the countryside once and sent my belongings to New York City, submitting my resignation to the company. And so I ended up leaving the town I had lived in for many years. 1 month after submitting the divorce papers, my ex-husband called me several times, but I naturally ignored him. When I went shopping and returned, Sean was standing in front of my parents' house. "What do you want now?"
Hey, why are you living here anyway?
Sean yelled at me, spitting foam from his mouth. Considering the neighbors, I reluctantly let Sean into the house. With the housekeeper present, it should be fine for now. As soon as we entered the living room, Sean started up again.
So explain it. If you've renounced your inheritance, you shouldn't be able to live in this house, right? You told me about your father's debt, didn't you?
That's when I calmly replied. Oh, that? That was a lie.
Huh?
I told Sean calmly, and his eyes opened wide. I wouldn't tell the truth to a husband who brings up inheritance during the funeral, would I? My father didn't have any debt. The inheritance is all mine.
Huh? How much?
Oh, just a few million. Sean turned pale.
Why would you lie like that? Weren't we a couple?
A couple, huh? Didn't you confess that you approached me after finding out I was Silas King's daughter? Were you after the fortune from the start? That's why you suddenly quit your job right after we got married.
That's...
If you had been a sincere husband regardless of my father, maybe I would have told you the truth. We might have used the inheritance together, but you weren't like that. And that's not all. As I calmly told him, Sean exploded in anger.
You traitor! Forgetting the kindness I showed you?
Who's the real traitor here?
Huh?
In front of the bewildered Sean, I threw down several photos. They depicted Sean entering a hotel in broad daylight with an unfamiliar woman.
What? What's this?
I was venting to my dad about how you quit your job and don't even come home, and it seems he quietly updated his will. I found the result of that in the study drawer.
No way. Your father?
As Sean turned pale and trembled, I told him. The divorce is already final, so whether you scream or not, you won't get any inheritance. Tough luck. And I'll also be claiming alimony for your infidelity. Be prepared for that.
You? Even though you're rich, you're going to demand alimony too? You devil. Money grabber.
That's fine. I'll hire a lawyer and squeeze you dry. Rot in hell, you scumbag. Sean's facial expression was changing rapidly, and I had to kick him out of the house. After that, Sean quietly returned to his hometown. I demanded alimony from him and his mistress. She apparently had an affair with Sean despite knowing he was married. Sean and the woman eventually broke up after a dispute over the matter. I explained Sean's behavior at the funeral and the reason for our divorce to those around me. In the end, Sean was cut off by his family and abandoned by his friends. Furthermore, because one of my friends happened to be a colleague of Sean's at his company, rumors spread within the company and wasn't unable to remain there. Currently, it seems that Sean is living in a temporary apartment and working part-time to repay the debt he incurred from the alimony. It must be a lonely and miserable life, but I have no sympathy whatsoever. I believe he brought it upon himself. On the other hand, I have secured a new job. Thanks to my father's inheritance, I won't struggle financially, but I won't rely on it excessively. I intend to cherish what my father left behind for times of need. With cherished memories of my beloved father in my heart, I hope to find someone truly trustworthy this time.